Hi guys! Today's video is going to be a pretty big roundup of most of the makeup that I've been trying for this first half of 2024, and I wanted to review them and rank them in a tier list. I've seen these types of videos from Julia Adams MUA, and it's kind of like a twist on a speed reviews that I feel like makes it a little bit more interesting to watch. So I will link Julia's most recent video like this below. I know I've also seen Kelly Gooch do this type of video. I'll link hers below as well. My tier list, I decided for this first one to just stick with the traditional tier list categories. So we have S tier, which is like above all the rest. These are like tippy top favorites. Then we have A tier, things that are excellent, that I love and recommend. B tier, things that are good but maybe have a couple of flaws or caveats. C tier is just so-so average. D tier, we're getting into the category of things that I don't like, don't recommend, but maybe there is someone that I would recommend the product to. And then there's F tier, and I wouldn't recommend these products to anyone. Let's start with the category of complexion and base products. This is the ever bewildering Milk Makeup Cloud Glow Primer. So they claim that this is a skincare-backed foam brightening primer that creates a smooth base, holds makeup for up to 12 hours, and hydrates skin for a natural glow. This is a literal foam, which I think is what makes it so viral, is that it's just, you know, a different format for a primer. It has a really soft, like coconut water kind of scent. As you blend it in, it feels like water. Like it feels like you're just blending water into your skin. I don't have much to say about this product other than that it literally doesn't do anything. Like it doesn't brighten, it doesn't look glowy, it doesn't hold on to my makeup any better than no primer. I've worn this several times on just one half of my face, no primer on the other half. I've noticed either no difference or the side with this by the end of the day looked a little bit more dry. I would say skip this. It just feels really gimmicky to me. It's just something that's easily going to go viral because it looks cool as you apply it, but it doesn't do anything. Yes, it has some skincare ingredients in it, which I feel like you could say that about any product. Honestly, you could call anything a skincare ingredient. I much prefer the Milk Hydro Grip Primer. I actually do think that is a really nice and effective primer for longevity. I'm gonna put this in D tier because it's not like it's doing anything really awful. It's just that it's not doing anything at all. So I feel like F tier should be reserved for those products that are like egregiously terrible. This, I'm gonna be gentle with this one and put it in D tier, but I don't know, it's kind of teetering between the two for me. This year so far, I have added 2 new foundations to my collection, both of which have been very, very hyped up. We have the Covergirl Simply Ageless Skin Perfector Essence and the Urban Decay Face Bond. I tested each of these in 2 separate testing new makeup get ready with me's, and my thoughts have changed a lot since those videos. Let's start with the Covergirl Simply Ageless product. So this is, they call a Hydro Fresh tint. I have the shade 10 Fair, which is surprisingly too light for me. Even though in the bottle it looks like a good shade, I actually feel like it goes on the skin looking lighter than it looks in the bottle, which is actually the opposite of the Urban Decay one that we're about to talk about. Oh, by the way, I should say my skin type. Right now, I would describe my skin type as combo. I have some drier areas of my face, like the lower half of my face, and then my T-zone tends to get a little bit oily throughout the day. Back to this product. The first time I used this, I hated it. It looked really dry and it clung to a lot of my dry patches. Since then, I've tried it a bunch more times, and every time I use it, I like it more and more. Like, it has just been growing on me more and more. So after that video, a lot of you guys shared with me that the best way to use this product is to really warm it up between your fingers, because this has those pigment beads in it that are suspended in this clear serum-like liquid. And so when you pump it out, it looks like a foundation that's gone bad. Like, it looks separated and kind of gross, honestly. Like, it's a weird kind of experience to use this, but I will just take one pump, no more than that, in my hand, warm it up between my fingers, and then I apply it to my face. My favorite way to apply it is just with my fingers. I find that that just helps it melt into my skin the best. The other key with this is to pair it with a very hydrated base, because if you have dry skin or any dry patches on your face, this will cling to them if your skin is not well prepped beforehand. So I like to pair this with my more glowy, really like rich sunscreens, like the Purito Daily Go-To sunscreen. That's the one that I tend to pair with this and the Urban Decay Face Bond. Whenever I wear it that way, I love it. I think it makes my skin look really nice. It definitely is a true skin tint. I would say it has sheer coverage, but it's enough coverage to just kind of even out your skin tone. The other thing about this is that it does have a soft matte finish, which I like in a skin tint because it's kind of harder to find mattifying skin tints. I feel like most of them are super dewy, so it's nice to see some that are a little bit more on the matte side. I think I'm going to be loving this throughout the summer, and I'm really glad that I kept giving it more chances because at first I was ready to just completely write it off, and I was upset because it's also so expensive. It's retails for $21.49 at Ulta. I would say if you're going to buy this product, try and get it at either Target or Walmart if you have access to either of those, because it's like $16 there versus $21. It's like $5 cheaper at those stores. So I would recommend trying to get it there. And I kind of wish I'd gotten the shade 2 or like the next shade up, but I've been able to make this one work, and it lasts really well throughout the day. I feel like it just kind of sets down and it stays there all day. Didn't expect to completely change my mind on this, but I have been loving it. So I'm gonna put this in the A tier. Not quite enough to be S tier because like I said, you know, it was a little finicky at the beginning, but once I got the hang of it, I've been in love. The Urban Decay Face Bomb has also definitely grown on me since the first time I tried it. I still don't love it as much as the Covergirl. They describe this as a self-setting, medium coverage matte foundation. This does set down to a powder finish very quickly after you blend it in. It sets within seconds, and I think that probably has to do with the high alcohol content in this. The fourth ingredient in here is denatured alcohol. So I do want to point that out. It has a lot of alcohol in it, which I think is what allows it to dry very quickly. It also contains 3% niacinamide, which is also in like every skincare product ever. So, you know, I don't really care that it's in a foundation, but that's there. This has grown on me a lot since I first tried it. As I've gotten the hang of it, similar to with the CoverGirl Essence, it is crucial to really, really hydrate and prep your skin before applying this if you have any amount of dryness to your skin at all. So again, my favorite sunscreen to pair this with is the Purito Daily Go-To. That one is very, very glowy, very dewy, almost a little bit heavy in the sense that like it really richly moisturizes my skin. So that's the kind of thing I need to prep my skin with before I use this if I want it to sit well on my skin. But when I do that, it looks really nice. They say that you can use a sponge for a more natural skin-like finish. For more coverage, use a brush, and for maximum coverage, use your fingers. If you remember in my first impression of this, I tried a sponge on one half of my face and my fingers on the other. I hated the way that it blended in with my fingers. It just looked so dry, and not only dry, but just like kind of scaly on my skin. Just not a good look. So the only way I've applied this since then is with a sponge, and I've had great luck with that. I've been using it with the sponge that they sent it along with, this Urban Decay. It's like this giant purple sponge. I like the sponge, but I don't think it's better than like the $1 AOA sponges. And this one has already started tearing on me. Granted, I have washed it probably like 7 times at this point, but yeah, I would expect it to hold up for a little bit longer. Anyway, that's the sponge I use to apply it, and I like the finish that I get with that. Now, even though this has a matte finish on its own, because I have to apply it with such a glowy sunscreen, that glow is going to show through no matter what. So I'm still getting a pretty glowy finish when I use this product. Then, of course, I can mattify with a powder, and this is what I have on today along with the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Loose Powder. And I still have a little bit of glow peeking through. It's been a couple of hours since I applied both of those products, and now, you know, we're starting to see a little bit of shine. I don't feel like this controls shine very well. I'm not the oiliest person out there by any means, but by the end of the day, my T-zone does get pretty shiny when I wear this. The other thing I want to note with this formula is that this oxidizes. You know how they say to size down in like fashion? Shade down with this product and shade up with the CoverGirl Essence, because this oxidizes big time. They sent me the shade 5 Fair Neutral. This is way too dark on me. But I make it work. Like this is what I have on right now, and I feel like it, you know, it's working. Clearly just a couple shades too dark on my skin tone, and also I would not describe this as a neutral undertone. I think this is a very warm undertone. I think I probably would have been better off with the shade 2, I think, looking at the shade range, but just know it oxidizes. I'll insert a photo here of what it looks like after it's dried down versus what it looks like when you first apply it, so you can see it does darken like a shade or two from what it originally looks like. So definitely be aware of that. And I also just want to note that because I do feel like it's a little bit harder to fairly judge a formula when the shade is just not quite right. And I guess, you know, the same could be said for the CoverGirl one. Both of these are just not quite the right shade. It's also so funny, on the back of this it says caution in bold letters, flammable until dry. Do not use near fire, flame, or heat. I think it's just because it has denatured alcohol, which is flammable, I'm pretty sure. Let me look that up. Yes. denatured alcohol as well as isopropyl alcohol are highly flammable, so I think they just have to put that on here. I think this is definitely not for everyone. I would recommend it more so to oily skin people, or if you have dry skin and you just want something that's self-setting and matte, I do think it can work for dry skin. I think I'm really going to enjoy this in the summertime especially. I'm going to put this in B tier. I was going to say C tier. I'm going to be generous because like I said, the shade is just not right for me, so that's probably skewing my opinion of it a little bit, so I'm just going to bump it up to the B tier. Yeah, I think it's a cool product. Onto this concealer. I have been testing this so much over the last few weeks. I've used this almost every day for the past like month. And this is the Natasha Denona High Glam Concealer. I wear the shade N2, but the shade, again, is too freaking dark. So I bought this because of all the hype. And I feel like whenever I do that, maybe I just go into the product with like way too high expectations, but I'm almost always let down when I buy something because of the hype. Maybe not always. I mean, there's definitely some things that have lived up to the hype, but this has just been kind of a letdown for me. Not only because of the shade, really trying to judge it fairly despite the shade being a little bit off. I just don't like the way this sits on my under eyes. I don't feel like it looks any different than all the other under eye concealers. Like the LA Girl Pro Conceal, I feel like gives me a very similar look to this, and that to me is just such an average concealer formula. This is just average to me. That's how it, so it's medium coverage. The creaseless claim, it's not creaseless, it creases. The only way I can have less creasing with it is if I apply just like a tiny dot, which I think would be true for any concealer. But when I apply just a tiny dot, I feel like I don't get enough coverage. I get like light coverage at best. So I still have to apply a pretty generous amount of this to get medium coverage. It does settle into my fine lines. Usually I'll apply my concealer, then I'll do any cream cheek products, and then I'll set my under eyes. So by the time I get to setting my under eyes, usually that's when I can start to see some creasing, and I definitely get creasing with this. I feel like every concealer is going to settle into your fine lines in some way. Some more than others. I still feel like the NYX Bare With Me Concealer Serum is the best for less creasing. I still like the NYX Bare With Me concealer so much more than the Natasha Denona, but by the end of the day, I just don't like the way it looks on my under eyes. It looks dry, crepey. I definitely will have some settling into my fine lines, especially by the end of the day. Yeah, I just don't see what everyone else is seeing in this. I wish I did. I want to love it because it was expensive. And again, maybe if I had the correct shade, I would like it more, but I don't really want to go and spend another $30 to try my luck with a different shade because I just don't like the way the formula sits on my under eyes. So I am going to put this in the C tier because to me it's just very average. Another thing I picked up during the Sephora sale was the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Loose Powder, and I got the mini size, which turns out is not that much smaller than the e.l.f. Halo Glow Loose Powder, which has been a favorite for years at this point. The e.l.f. Halo Glow Setting Powder comes with 6.8 grams and the Huda comes with 6 grams. So it's only a little bit smaller than the e.l.f. for the mini, so just wanted to point that out. And I actually calculated the cost per ounce of the full size of this versus the e.l.f. Halo Glow. And the full size of this, yes, it is a little bit more expensive per ounce, but it's not that much more expensive per ounce if you get the full size. So not a bad value for a high-end product. I got the shade Pound Cake in this, which is just a translucent, slightly yellow tinted powder. Kind of wishing I'd gotten a different shade because I do feel like it, especially because I've been trying the Natasha Denona concealer, which is also kind of too yellow on me. I feel like my under eyes just look way too yellow when I pair these together. But right now I have this over the NYX concealer. That's what I have on my under eyes right now, and I think it looks fantastic. So this is what I set my face with today, as well as my under eyes, and I really like it. I think it's a really nice loose powder. It's mattifying, it's blurring, very finely milled. I think it makes my skin look really nice and airbrushed, but the only thing with this that I cannot stand is the packaging. I think the mini size packaging is different than the full size. Let me know if I'm wrong about that, but the mini, so it's really interesting. You lift up this flap and then you turn it to open, and it has this puff on the inside, which I have not used. I don't plan on using it because I just don't like the idea of using this to apply powder to my face and getting, you know, oils and product on the puff, and then there's not really a great way to clean this, so then it's just going to be sitting there marinating with the powder. I don't want to do that. So I guess I could rip off the puff, but I don't know. I guess it's there in case I ever am in a pinch and I don't have any other thing to apply it with. Because the lid looks like this, that means there's really nowhere to dump this powder into to then pick up with a brush or puff. It has this really deep well there from the top to where the sifter is. So what I typically will do is just kind of tip it over on its side, tap out enough powder into this well, and then I'll dip either a small brush or a powder puff in there. The only thing is I can't use it with a large brush unless I were to use a different lid from some other product, but that's okay. I don't mind setting my face with like a small brush like this one. That's what I did today. So that's my only complaint. I don't know. I just feel like this packaging is like they're trying too hard. They're trying a little bit too hard with the whole puff thing. But other than that, I've really been enjoying it. I still think you can get a beautiful look with the e.l.f. Halo Glow or even the Makeup Revolution Translucent Baking Powder. Both of those I think are great affordable options. But if you're wondering how this is, I do think it is a lovely powder. It does have a scent to it, sort of like a floral, it's not a super strong scent, but it is scented. Like you will notice it as you're applying it. But I saw that they came out with a fragrance-free version of this, which is really nice. So I'm going to put this in the B tier simply because I don't love the packaging. Everything else about it I really like. The last thing here in the complexion and base category is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Setting Spray. Another thing I picked up during the Sephora sale. Also got the mini of this, which is a pretty decent sized mini. Comes with 1.1 fluid ounces. This is actually a really nice setting spray. I understand why people like this so much because first of all, this is one of the very few setting sprays that does not contain denatured alcohol. It does have phenethyl alcohol really far down on the ingredient list, but as far as I can tell, that is a fatty alcohol, so it's not going to be drying like denatured alcohol. Somehow, at the same time, this does give my skin like that kind of tight, locked-in feeling that a setting spray would, like the Urban Decay All Nighter. I feel like that's like the standard example of a long wear setting spray. It does kind of give me that like slightly tight feeling, and it definitely helps with the longevity of my makeup. Again, I like to test products like this on one half of my face versus no product on the other to see what kind of difference it makes. And I've done that a few times, and I feel like whenever I have this on, my makeup just stays looking a little bit fresher by the end of the day versus the side without. This does give a little bit of a glow to the face, but it's not oily at all. It feels, like I said, it feels really tight and like locked in, but it also still has a little bit of luminosity. I've really been enjoying this. Again, this does have a scent to it, actually kind of similar to the Huda Beauty powder scent, like kind of just like a soft floral scent. I'm gonna put this in A tier. I've really been enjoying it. Obviously it's very expensive, and I do think that if you want to save some money, Makeup Revolution makes some really good setting sprays. And I think the Makeup Revolution Fix and Glow reminds me of this. That one does have some shimmer to it, but it doesn't really translate onto the skin. You just see it in the bottle, but I really don't feel like it adds any like glitter to my face at all. But that one does a similar thing where it locks in your makeup, but it also gives some glow. That one does contain denatured alcohol though. The thing that's really special about this one to me is that it doesn't have alcohol. And it's the only long wear setting spray I've tried that I know of that doesn't have alcohol in it. I was under the impression that you had to have alcohol in a setting spray if you wanted it to have that long wear effect, but I guess I've been proven wrong. The next category is drops. Drops are all the rage these days, specifically bronzing drops. Every brand is suddenly coming out with their version of a bronzing drop. I think it all started with the Drunk Elephant bronzing drops. Now everybody has to make their version of it. But the two that I've been testing here are the Glow Recipe Watermelon Glow Niacinamide Hue Drops. So this is like the bronzy version of the original Dew Drops. And then we have the Revolution Bright Light Bronzing Drops. And in this I have the shade Scorched Light Medium. This also comes in a deeper shade. Along with the bronzing drops, they also released the Bright Light Glow Drops, which is like a glowy primer, highlighter, you know, whatever you want it to be. And they also launched the Blush Drops. I'm not going to be reviewing the Blush Drops because they only have one shade of this, and as you can see, it's kind of a light shade that is not going to show up on deeper skin tones. I really think they should have at least come out with a deeper blush option, so not going to be reviewing that. But starting with the two bronzing drops, now I haven't tried the Drunk Elephant ones, so I can't compare to that one, but the Revolution bronzing drops seem more similar to the Drunk Elephant than the Glow Recipe from what I've heard. This is very pigmented. They say you can either use alone for a natural glow, mix with a foundation or a moisturizer, or you could use it as a liquid bronzer. So that's how I'm wearing it right now, and that is my favorite way to use it, is as a liquid bronzer. I've tried it alone. That was a huge mistake. It looked crazy on me. It was just so intense. It's just too dark to apply all over my face and look sane. So that was a no-go. The day that I did that though, I ended up pairing it with the Covergirl Skin Essence on top, which is a little bit too light, and they actually balanced each other out pretty nicely, but I'm still not gonna do that again. Of course, there's also the option to mix this with a moisturizer. For me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I typically don't use moisturizer in the AM. Usually I just use my sunscreen, which serves as a moisturizer. And you can't mix this with sunscreen or any product with sunscreen for that matter because it'll dilute the sun protection coverage. So I guess if I were getting ready at night and wanted to mix this with a moisturizer under my makeup, I could do that. Maybe that's something I would do more in the winter. It's more often that I'm applying makeup after the sun goes down in the winter versus the summer. But anyway, it's just one of those products that I feel like I don't know how to incorporate it into my routine other than to use it as a liquid bronzer, which I have really enjoyed. I find it very easy to work with. Even though it's too pigmented to apply all over my face by itself, as a bronzer, it still does have a little bit of sheerness to it that makes it just really easy to blend it into your skin. It blends in like 2 seconds. I just blended it in with a brush and I'm, happy with the way it looks. So that I've found is my favorite way to use this. This would also be handy to me if I needed to darken a foundation, can mix it in. You can do that with any liquid bronzer. I think if you were wanting to find a more affordable version of the Drunk Elephant drops, again, haven't tried those, but I think that this is probably going to do a similar thing. And, it's definitely much cheaper. So yeah, I just feel kind of so-so about it, but I could see why other people might really enjoy it. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. So then there's the Glow Recipe Niacinamide Hue Drops. I like this so much more than the Revolution to apply all over the face because this is a lot more sheer. When you pump it out, it looks pretty dark, but it sheers out really nicely. It's a very subtle bronze tint that it gives the skin. So I don't know how even apparent the bronze glow would be on anyone deeper than me because it's almost barely there on my skin tone. It more so gives the look as if I had self-tanned my face. You could definitely get that look by mixing the Revolution drops with a moisturizer to sheer it out, but this is just kind of like an all-in-one serum. However, I do not like using this as a liquid bronzer because I found that it just lifted up my foundation. It just didn't play well with other cream products. I think it's just a little bit too serum-y and skincare-y to work over makeup. So very different from the Revolution bronzing drops. Also, if you're wondering how this compares to the original Dew Drops from Glow Recipe, those I actually find more glowy than this. This does have a little bit of a glow, but it's not as glowy and glassy as the Dew Drops. So the finish is a little bit different, but it does give you that sort of bronzed tint to your skin. So both of these are very different. The Glow Recipe ones I like using on their own as bronzing drops. The Revolution I prefer just using as a liquid bronzer. That's the difference there. The Glow Recipe, I would put this also in B tier. Yeah, I think both of these belong in the B tier even though they're very different. Neither of them is going to be like a top favorite for me. I forgot to say, neither of these has like glitter to it, but they do both have really like subtle shimmer particles to them. So then the Glow Drops, the shade of this is called Stardew Gold. Same with the Glow Drops, this one also has just really subtle shimmery particles to it, but it's not glittery at all. So today I actually wanted to demo this next to the e.l.f. Halo Glow Liquid Filter just to kind of compare because this is a similar type of glowy multi-purpose product. So you'll see in the side-by-side, the e.l.f. one has a lot more glow to it. It's a more dramatic glow. It also has sheer coverage, whereas the Revolution ones, I don't notice any coverage with these. So I actually don't have highlighter on right now, but I have also used this as a liquid highlighter, and it gives a really pretty subtle glow, The thing is, I just feel like there are so many of this type of product. If you have a glowy primer already, whether it's the e.l.f. Halo Glow, the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, or any of the other millions of glowy filter drop products, if you have one, you kind of have them all. So if you already have one you like, I just don't think you need to go out and get this because it's not going to do anything different. Even before the Charlotte Tilbury product came out, I had a glowy primer just like this from CoverGirl, and it actually had a very similar scent too to this. So it's just this type of product has been out forever and you probably already have one like this in your collection. So yeah, I'm going to put this in the B tier. Again, I feel like maybe I'm being too generous, but I can't really think of any cons or drawbacks to this product. You know, it's good for what it is. If you want something like this and you don't already have one, this will be a fine one to pick up, but I just don't think it's revolutionary. Okay, I have a lot of cheek products to chat about today, so let's jump right into these. Starting with the bronzers, I have, well, 3.5 bronzers, because one of them is more of like a multi-purpose product, the Danessa Myricks Colorfix, but I did try it as a bronzer and I have thoughts. So let's start with the Glossier Cloud Paint in sale, another one of the things that I bought during the Sephora sale. This is their new liquid bronzer, so it's like the bronzer version of their popular Cloud Paint blushes, which I haven't tried the blushes, but I've really been enjoying this bronzer. This they describe as a gel cream, and I think that's a pretty accurate description. It's a nice kind of thin, lightweight gel, and I really have been enjoying it. It is very user-friendly. I tend to think of liquid bronzers as the least user-friendly of all the types of bronzers. I feel like powder and cream bronzer can be really easy to work with, but liquids can be kind of tricky. This one I find so foolproof. I love the tone of it. I like to just dot it on with my fingers and then blend it out with the brush. They also say you can blend it with your fingers, and after it dries down, it doesn't have like a matte powdery finish. It's not like a cream to powder, but it does dry down, so it doesn't stay like super sticky or tacky on your skin. And it really just has kind of like a natural finish after it dries. Like it's a little bit, you know, it has a little bit of glow to it, but it's not like super dewy. Yeah, really been enjoying that. Glad I bought it. I am going to put this in A tier. I think it's just a solid A tier. I did finally purchase the NYX Buttermelt Bronzer. I have been wanting to get my hands on this ever since it launched. It has gotten such stellar reviews, and I was especially excited about this line because a lot of the shades lean pretty rosy, which I love in bronzers. So I got the lightest shade, which is Buttercup. First of all, it does have like a kind of beachy scent, a little coconutty, kind of like the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer, but it's got like a little bit more of like a vanilla flavor to it. I see where it gets the name because it does have a very buttery feel, even though it is a powder, and this does have quite a glow to it. It's not overly sparkly, it's more of like a pearlescent glow. This is so interesting. I do not like this as a bronzer. I don't like it at all as a bronzer, but I love it as a blush. Like, this is my favorite blush right now. The reason why I don't like this as a bronzer is that I feel like it's just a little bit too dark to wear as a bronzer on me. Something about it being a little too dark, plus that glow that it gives, it's almost too dark in the way that a highlighter can be too dark. But at the same time, I love the way it works just worn as a blush. But when I apply it like a bronzer in kind of like the outer part of my cheeks, my forehead, my temples, the bridge of my nose, there's just something kind of odd looking about it. It's just kind of like shadowy in the way that a highlighter looks when it's too dark. But as a blush, just applied to my cheeks only, I love it. And I really think it's because it has that sort of rosy undertone. This, like, even just swatching this is such a delight because it just melts into your skin like butter. Like, I see where it gets the name. But, I mean, it looks like a bronzer when I swatch it, but this is just like the perfect rosy, bronzy blush color. I've actually been kind of searching for a blush like this. I love beige and like bronzy blushes, and you know, I love like actually the NYX Sweet Cheeks blush in Nude Tude. That's a great beige, like moussey liquid blush, but I didn't have a powder blush in that type of shade. And this is definitely different from Nude Tude, like a very different type of color. It's much warmer, more bronzy, but I love this. This is kind of, for a while there, I was eyeing that Patrick Ta blush duo in She's So LA. It's that like taupey brown blush shade. I was thinking about buying that, but I kept holding off because it just looked like it might be a little too dark on me. And I'm glad I did because I wasn't expecting this to be a blush. Like, I was buying it expecting it to be a bronzer, but I really was not enjoying it when I was using it as a bronzer. But then I was like, what if I try this as a blush? And I loved it. I fell in love. So I think if you are wanting this to be a bronzer and your skin is as fair or fairer than mine, you might find the shade to be a little bit too dark, especially if you're like me. I really like my bronzers to be very light, not too much deeper than my skin tone. I feel like matte bronzers I can get away with something a little bit deeper sometimes, but for some reason it just doesn't work on me as a bronzer. But if you're looking for a bronzy blush, highly recommend. It has such a beautiful glow to the cheeks too. Like, it kind of serves as both a blush and a highlighter in one. It's not super, super blingy like a highlighter, but it just gives a really nice sheen to the cheeks. So I have been loving this, even though I'm not loving it for the same reasons that I thought I would. I am going to put this, should I put this in the S tier? Part of me wants to put this in S tier just because of how much I love it. And you know what? I'm gonna put it in S tier. Even though it's not what I expected, I'm almost loving it even more than I think I would have if it were a bronzer. Like, I think this is filling a hole in my collection that I didn't realize was there, but I'm just so happy with it. And it's funny because NYX actually did come out with some Buttermelt blushes, but I'm not interested in any of those shades. I just don't like any of the shades. But this is a perfect blush shade, so ooh, I love this so much. I have also been playing around with the Sigma matte bronzer in the shade Light. This is the lightest shade that it comes in. Been really enjoying this as well. I don't think it's going to replace my Fenty bronzer. That is still my favorite. This one is matte, like it says in the name. This one is matte. It's a little bit deeper than the Fenty bronzer. It's closer to the depth of the AOA Perfect bronzer in Frappe, and I actually think the shade of this is pretty similar to that AOA bronzer, which is $1. So if you wanted something similar but much cheaper, I recommend the AOA. So it is a little bit deeper than my tippy top favorite bronzer, but I think this will make a really great bronzer shade for me in the summer. That's when I tend to reach for my slightly deeper bronzers. I mean, this is not deep by any means, but for my skin tone, it does just, you know, it's definitely a more noticeable bronze. The undertone of this is definitely warm, kind of caramely. It's got a little bit of golden, yellowy undertones to it, not a whole lot of rosiness in here, but I don't find it overly orange. And as far as the performance of it, I find it really easy to work with. I just blend it out with a nice big fluffy brush, and I find that it blends in really easily. It doesn't look patchy, doesn't look muddy on me, and overall, yeah, I've been happy with it. I don't think it's gonna be like a top favorite, but it's nice. I'm gonna put this in the B tier. Next, there are 4 cream blushes that I've been trying out. 2 of which I purchased, 2 of which were sent in PR. Another thing that Sigma sent over to me was their cream blush in the shade Pashmina. This is a coral, a really pretty bright rosy coral shade. This is what I have on my cheeks right now. I think this is a really lovely cream blush formula, very easy to work with. It's one of those that you really don't have to be too careful. You know, you can slowly build it up, so you can just tap your brush in there 1 or 2 times and get a nice sheer amount of color, or you can build it up to be a lot more bold and intense. So that's my favorite type of cream blush, is the kind that's very flexible. You can really, you know, customize the way it looks based on how much you apply. It's buildable, but it's not going to give you clown cheeks immediately. You would really have to try to get clown cheeks with this. This is also one of my favorite like summer shades of blush. Just a nice bright coral like this I think is so much fun and just youthful. Yeah, it just has kind of a thin texture. It's not going to be super glowy. It doesn't stay sticky or tacky on your cheeks. I'm not someone who has a lot of issues with blushes fading on me. I feel like most blushes, especially if I set them with a translucent powder, they're going to stay on for me all day. I am going to plop this straight on into the A tier. Then the other one that was sent in PR, this is the Kaja Dewy Bar in the shade Peach Cobbler. This was the only shade I decided to keep. Kind of a similar shade to that Sigma blush. This is also kind of like a bright coral shade, and this is something they say you can use on the cheeks and the lips. It's this kind of cool shaped like narrow stick that you twist up, and it does twist back down, which is good. Sometimes products like this, like you can't twist back down, and that's always a disaster. This is very dewy. It lives up to the name for sure. Like, it doesn't really set down or anything. It's gonna remain really glowy on your cheeks, unless of course you set it with a matte powder. I just don't really feel any sort of way about this. It's not bad. I like the look it gives my cheeks, but for some reason I'm just not like jumping up and down over this product. I'm definitely a little fatigued with stick products specifically, so that may be why. They say to apply it, just swipe it on your cheeks and blend it out, but it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. I wish it did, but when I swipe it onto my cheeks, I just don't get a very even, smooth look with it. I feel like it ends up patchy / kind of messes with the foundation underneath or any other cheek products I have on. So as usual, my favorite way to use this is to pick it up with a brush. I'll just pick it up straight from the stick with a brush or put it on the back of my hand first. This, because it is so dewy, I do find that it fades just a little bit by the end of the day, but I still have some color on my cheeks by the end of the day. I'm torn whether to put this in the B tier or the C tier. I'm gonna put it in C tier because C, that's just a straight up average grade, and I feel like this is just average. It's just so. There's nothing really remarkable about it. Okay, then onto the 2 blushes that I purchased myself. I'm gonna save my favorite for the last blush that we talk about. So let's talk about the Saie Dew Blush in Rosy. So this is one of those doe foot applicator liquid blushes, very reminiscent of the Rare Beauty, the e.l.f. Camo. All, you know, every brand also has to come out with one of these now. So this surprised me the first time I used it because it was way more pigmented than I expected. I should have read the instructions because online it says to just put 1 or 2 dots on your cheeks, and I think I did maybe 3 dots, and it was too much. Also, unfortunately, this isn't surprising to me, but like most doe foot blushes, I don't like the way it applies when I dot it directly onto my cheeks with the doe foot and then blend it, because I find that in the spot that I applied it, it kind of lifts up the foundation and it just looks uneven. So the best way to apply this is just to the back of your hand first, which is just, you know, it's kind of a hassle. I wish that they would figure out a way to formulate these things so that they could be used without having to put it on your hand first. Like I said, I have the shade Rosy. I love the shade of this. It is so pretty. My favorite type of blush shade. It's like a peachy rose. That's my favorite type of shade. Reminds me actually a lot of the shade of the Milani Cheek Kiss Cream Blush in Nude Kiss. Staying power on this is really, really good. I don't notice any fading with this throughout the day. It does have a dewy, juicy finish, and it is a little bit sticky feeling. So I don't love that about it. I don't like it as much as I like the Rare Beauty Liquid Blush, and I also don't like it as much as this next one. So I'm actually going to put it with the Kaja Dewy Bar in the C tier because, I mean, C is not a bad grade, it's an average grade. So that's what I'm giving this, an average grade. Okay, I saved the best blush for last. This is the e.l.f. Camo Liquid Blush in the shade Peach Perfect. I love this. I love this even more than the Rare Beauty Liquid Blush formula, and the reason for that is this one is the only one of the 3 that I have in this type of format that I can dot straight onto my cheeks from the doe foot, blend it out with a brush, and it looks flawless. It could have to do with the shade. The shade of this is lighter than the ones that I have in the Saie and the Rare. You can see the e.l.f. one is a lighter shade. So that may be part of why it works for me that way. I haven't tried any other shades, but at least this shade I can say is great for just dotting straight onto your cheek with that doe foot, which is really how they say to use these products. So I'm glad that it actually works that way. Love this shade so, so much. It is this light nude warm peach. Has a really subtle pearlescent glow as well, which is something that sets it apart from these other 2, is that it does have a little bit of luminosity to it in the form of pearly particles, very, very fine shimmer particles. It's not glittery at all. And I find that those shimmers don't really like show up that much on my cheeks. You'd have to look up really, really close to see them. This color is so perfect for me. Like, I just love this type of nude peach blush color. It goes with everything. I feel like it really complements my skin tone, my hair color, my eye color. Like, it's my perfect blush shade. This is, I would say, just as pigmented as those other 2. Like, you really only need 1 dot per cheek, even though it's so light. I thought that it might, you know, I might be able to use a little bit more of it, but no, like, just a dot is all you need. It's very pigmented. Just so happy with this one. So this is going to join NYX Buttermelt Bronzer in S tier. That concludes the cheek category. Now we have eyes, and then I have 1 lip product. Let's start with this Danessa Myricks Colorfix Nudes Waterproof Liquid Pigment in the shade Nude 4. So the cool thing about these Colorfix products is that they are multi-purpose. So you can use them as eyeshadows, cheek products, lip products, depending on the shade. I decided to go with a shade that I felt like I could use for multiple things, as opposed to like one of the duochrome glittery eyeshadows. I'm not really going to use that on my cheeks or my lips. So I wanted to get something that I could really test for all those different purposes, and I really like the shade Nude 4. It's a nice warm beige color. My favorite way to use this is as an eyeshadow. A little bit of this goes a very long way. Like, you just need the tiniest drop. I think this little tube will last forever. I think the first time I tried this, I think I applied a little bit too much to my eyes, and I felt like it was a little bit just kind of dry looking, a little heavy looking on my eyes. So after that, I've just been using like the tiniest amount possible, and I still get like full pigment across my eyes. Because the color is pretty light, it's not a whole lot deeper than my skin tone, but it gives me this really pretty beige wash of color on my lids. I like it for a one and done matte look. I like it for a base as an eyeshadow. For an eyeshadow, it gets my stamp of approval. I like it. You definitely want to apply this over an eyeshadow primer if you normally are prone to creasing, because it will crease if you don't. Next, I tried this as a bronzer, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it as a bronzer, and I probably won't use it again as a bronzer unless I'm like in a pinch and I just need to use something really quick. The shade is nice, but it's a little bit more yellow than I like to wear for bronzer, and I felt like it just looked a little bit heavy and like kind of dry, especially on my cheeks, even though I used just a really small amount. I also tried it as a lip color, and I liked the shade actually on my lips more than I thought I would. I paired it with like a slightly deeper lip liner, the Jones Road Lip Pencil in Nudist, and I actually liked the really light nude color, especially for just like something that I would apply to the center of my lips to kind of contour and shape my lips a little bit. But I didn't like the way that it sat on my lips. I felt like it looked really dry. Definitely matte, but it settled into my lip lines and just didn't look flattering. I even applied a gloss over it and it just kept settling into those lip lines. So maybe some of the other shades would work better, but I just find the formula like a little bit too thick and dry to use as a cheek or lip product. So yeah, I don't know. I was really excited about this product and I just kind of think it's okay. So I'm gonna put this in the C tier because honestly for like a cream eyeshadow, I would prefer an eyeshadow stick versus a liquid where I have to be so careful not to squeeze out too much or else I'm gonna waste product. So yeah, I'm surprised to be saying it's not my favorite. Okay, I'm gonna put this in C tier, but it's more of a C minus. Like I would rate it slightly lower than like the Saie blush just because it has a few more drawbacks, but I don't feel like I want to put it in D tier. I think that would be a little harsh. So then eyeshadows. I have a few palettes. I also wanted to go ahead and share my thoughts on these Kaja Wink Dazzle eyeshadow and glitter multi-stick. So I have two shades. I have the shade Peach Sprinkle and Mocha Sparkle. So these are dual-ended. You get just a regular eyeshadow stick on one end, and then on the other end you get this little sponge tip glitter stamp. I have the peach one on my eyes right now. It's the one I've had on the whole video. So this one has a satin finish, and then the mocha one has a matte finish. I find these very easy to work with. You guys know I love an eyeshadow stick. I love how easy they are to slap on. These are super easy to work with. They don't give you a completely opaque color. It's more like a wash of color, but I find it really easy to blend. I don't find them patchy at all. Unfortunately though, for me, these will fade and crease a little bit on my eyes, even when I do wear an eyeshadow primer underneath. So that's a letdown. Luckily they don't claim that these are crease proof or budge proof, so I appreciate that they're at least not lying, but I think if you have oily eyelids, you're probably going to want to steer clear of these. I especially love the shade of the Mocha Sparkle one. It's just this like light beige brown shade. This is the kind of thing that I think would be nice to use as an eyeliner, like just a smudgy liner on my lower lash line or something. I do like the glitter stamp end of these. I have the peach one today on my inner corner, and I also pulled it up onto the lid a little bit. I think it gives a really, really beautiful sparkle, but I don't know. I found these to be a little bit of a letdown, especially for $22. I would rather go for something like the e.l.f. or the Hard Candy. Those are much cheaper, like a fourth of the price, and I find them to just have better staying power. I feel kind of bad, but I'm going to put these in D tier because, you know, what's the point of an eyeshadow if it's going to fade and crease? Like I've only had this on for a couple of hours now, and you can see that they are fading and creasing just the slightest bit on my lids. Also have 3 palettes that I have brought into my collection in this first half of the year that I wanted to share my thoughts on. So first we have these 2 from Alter Ego. I'm going to kind of talk about these together because I have really similar thoughts on both of these. So these are both meant to dupe Natasha Denona palettes. We have the Dreamgaze and the Wildwood. Dreamgaze is meant to dupe the pastel. I love pastels, so you know I'm excited about that one. And then Wildwood is meant to dupe the Yucca palette. A lot of olivey greens and mustardy shades in there. So here are these 2. I've used these both quite a few times now, so I definitely have some thoughts. Overall, I tend to really enjoy Alter Ego's formula. I find it really user-friendly. I feel like most of their mattes and shimmers are, like, they feel high-end. The only thing, and this isn't necessarily Alter Ego's fault, but Natasha Denona loves to use those, like, cream matte shades, and both of these have a few of those. So the pastel palette has 4 of those cream shades. The shade Blush, Shell, Fizz, and Hazy. Those have that putty-like cream texture. I have decided I don't like that texture of eyeshadow. They're very finicky, and you have to just treat them differently than you would treat a normal matte, and I'm just like, why not just do a regular matte, you know? It's unfortunate because 2 of my favorite shades in here are this lime green and this cornflower blue. Both of those, like, those are probably my 2 favorite colors in here, but unfortunately they're both the cream shades. That doesn't stop me from using them though. I already have actually a pretty big dip in Hazy, love that type of blue shade so much. I've figured out how to work with them, and really the way to use them is, really I think the best way is to apply them with your finger, and the key is just not to build, you can't really build them on themselves because they will start to get kind of scaly and like dry. They look kind of scaly and dry on your eyes, so you just have to apply like one layer. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough on your finger or your brush in that first layer, because otherwise you can't really build it up a whole lot from there. Luckily those shades are pretty pigmented, so I'm able to do that, but I just have to give them special attention. But I love these colors so much that I'm willing to overlook that. This is like the perfect pastel palette. The only couple of shades in here that I don't really care for, I feel like I could do without, like these two shades down here, the purple and like this reddish shimmer, just because they feel kind of out of place to me in a pastel palette. Obviously those are not pastels, they're a little bit deeper, which I guess it's nice to have some contrast in here, but when I do a pastel look, I don't really want contrast. That's not really what I'm going for, so that's just a personal preference. I also am not usually a huge fan of aqua, greens, and turquoises on my eyes, so like this column here, not my most used, but I have been dipping into especially like these two columns, the blue and like the yellow, green, and peach column. Those are my favorite shades. I also love the lavender. So I've done a lot of looks with this. This is so far one of my most used palettes of the year. I don't love that cream formula, so that's my only gripe. And I think, you know, if you also don't like that formula, you might want to skip this one because it is 4 out of the 15 shades. It's kind of a large chunk of the shades. Doesn't stop me from using it though. So I'm going to put this in B tier. Not going to put it in A tier, even though I've been loving it. I'm not going to put it in A tier because of those cream shades, but other than that, I really enjoy it. Then the Wildwood palette has a lot of like really mossy greens, mustards. It also has this really fun, bright, electric yellowy green color. Again, pretty much a shade for shade equivalent to the Yucca palette. I did see a video from Angela Bright where she compared the Alter Ego one to the original from Natasha Denona, and she gave this a really good review, having been able to compare the two. I really enjoy the quality of these. I also love the layout of this. I tend to really like the layout of Alter Ego's palettes more than Natasha Denona's because they just feel a lot more organized. So the whole top row is shimmer and then the rest is matte. So it's just really easy to figure out looks with this. You could just do like trios in each of these columns. And I really like all of the shimmers in here. They all have, except for that middle taupey gray shade, the other 4 have a similar light green shimmer, but a different base. So Ray has a reddish base, Thrive has a taupey base, Golden is just like a pure green. It's not really a duochrome, it's just like straight green, and then Lush has a pretty translucent base with a light green shimmer. So for an all green palette, it's kind of cool that you have all those different undertones within that green, shimmery, golden family. If you like these kinds of colors, you have to obviously really like olive green and mustard. I think I like a little bit better the Nomad Okavango Safari palette, which actually has kind of a similar color story, but for some reason I like this one just a little bit better. It has a few more just neutral tones in it, whereas this one is very warm and either you're going to be really mustardy or really mossy, so like you have to like commit to that. Whereas with Okavango Safari, I find it just maybe a little bit more beginner friendly to these kinds of shades, but I still enjoy Wildwood. I don't really have any issues with the quality except for those 2 creams, which that's just a personal preference. I don't like those kinds of shades. So I'm also going to put this in the B tier, even though it's not necessarily my favorite color story. Just judging it objectively, like if you love this color story, I think you would get a lot of use out of this palette if you don't already have similar colors. Then we have the Sigma Cool Neutrals palette. This palette has gotten a lot of buzz for maybe the slightly misleading name. There are some cool tones in here, but they only really comprise about half of the palette. The rest of the palette is actually pretty warm, so it's neutral. I guess there are cool tones and then there are neutrals, so maybe that's what they meant. I don't know. Maybe they just named it that because they knew it would get a lot of attention. I don't know. This palette has really taken me by surprise. I almost didn't even open and use this. I almost just passed it on immediately because I felt like, you know, it does lean pretty deep. You don't really have any light mattes. Like, you have some good mid-toned mattes, but there are no light mattes in here. But I decided to give it a chance anyway, and I'm actually really glad I did because I have been enjoying this so much. It is very smoky on me, and usually this is not the time of year that I'm going for smoky looks, but I have just been having so much fun with this palette. The shimmers in here are so beautiful. They are so sparkly. I especially love the two top corner shades, Polished and Angel Wing. Those are both kind of like duochromy, really glittery shades, especially Angel Wing. It's this kind of smoky taupe that has just a little bit of purple to it. So pretty. And Polished, at first I thought this was going to be a light shimmer. Like the first time I used this shade, I put it in my inner corner. Big mistake. It was too deep for my inner corner. This actually has a kind of deep brown base, but a really pretty shimmer to it. I think Sigma has some really sophisticated shimmers. I really think they've improved their formula since the days of Enchanted, when I wasn't impressed with that formula. Their shimmers have improved so much. With Enchanted, I felt like I pretty much had to use those over a glitter primer to get them to really pop. But these, I don't need a glitter primer, they just pop on their own. And I really haven't missed having lighter mattes in here. Like, I find that between these three mattes, Superior, Harvest, and Fossil, those three more mid-tones, those are all the crease colors I really need. If I only use a small amount, they blend out to be really good crease shades on me. So I have surprisingly really been enjoying this palette. I still am not the biggest fan of Sigma's deep mattes. I do find that they can be a little bit sticky. They're just not as easy to blend out as some other formulas. But most of these deep mattes I use as like smoky liners, and used that way I have no problems with blending them. If you like to use those like super dark mattes more on your lid as opposed to just as a liner, you might have a little more trouble with them. You might need to set your eyeshadow primer with a powder first to have good blending with them. So that's the only drawback, and I do think the palette is pretty pricey. Especially considering, like, I still feel like they have a little bit of work to do with their deep mattes. But for the way that I use eyeshadows, I have loved so many of the looks. Nathan has commented on almost every look that I've done with this palette. He's been like, I love your look. And I'm like, oh, it's the Sigma palette. It's the Sigma palette. Like, it's always the Sigma palette. So, I don't know. It's been growing on me. I'm not a Sigma affiliate. They did send this to me in PR, but I don't have an affiliate code with them. As I always say with Sigma, wait for a sale, because they have pretty decent discounts throughout the year. Like, they recently did a 40% off sale. Around the holidays, I think they do 50% off. So they do some pretty good Black Friday sales as well. So I don't think this is necessarily worth full price, but if you can get a discount on it and you like those smoky tones, ooh, I really like this. I think I'm especially gonna like this in the winter. So I'm also gonna put this in B tier along with those other Alter Ego palettes. I think all three of these are solid Bs. The last product to review here, I recently purchased this in the Ulta sale. They were having a pretty good sale on a lot of like their drugstore products. This is the NYX Shine Loud Lip in the shade Goal Crusher. I broke my lip no-buy. What I'm telling myself is that this was free, so it doesn't count. Because NYX was buy two get one free, and I'm just gonna consider this my free product, and yeah, that's my logic, okay? I had just been really curious about this formula, and I saw Taylor Wynn using this in a video recently, and it reminded me that I had been eyeing this for like a couple years, and it looked so good on her. This was the same shade that she used, the shade Goal Crusher. It's like a nude brownie peach color. So this is a really interesting kind of innovative product. It's a dual-ended thing. So there's a liquid lipstick on one end and this clear gloss on the other, and the clear gloss you apply over the lipstick and it seals it in so that it's completely transfer proof, which is really cool. I know Covergirl has had a product like this out for years and years, so it's not necessarily like a new thing, but unfortunately, if you don't like liquid lipsticks, you're probably not gonna like this, because after that gloss wears off, you're left with just the color from the liquid lipstick, and it wears off exactly like a liquid lipstick does. Doesn't look super flattering in the lip lines, and it fades off in a really stark line in like the inside of your lips. With a nude color like this, I don't really feel like that's a huge problem because it's nude, so it kind of blends into my natural skin tone anyway. But especially with a bold color, I don't think that would be super cute. Kind of reminds me of those Urban Decay lip bonds that they released a few years ago. That wasn't a dual-ended thing. It was just like supposed to be a liquid lipstick, but it had a glossy finish and it was transfer proof. It wasn't fully transfer proof, and unfortunately that one also would kind of wear off in a liquid lipstick type of fashion, which I don't love. So that's like, I these days just prefer comfortable lip products that wear off gracefully, that I can just reapply. I do get a solid like 4 or 5 hours of wear out of this, but after you eat and drink, or just go about your day-to-day life talking, whatever, like, it's gonna start wearing off, and I feel like it doesn't reapply that nicely on itself. And that's the thing with liquid lipsticks, is they kind of start to look a little heavy once you reapply them. This also is hard to remove. Like, my cleansing balm has a hard time getting this off. I have to actually put on like a lip oil and then use like a tissue to really wipe it off, because the color will stay stuck, especially like in the corners of my lips. It's hard to remove. So it's long wearing, but the thing that I've been realizing about long wearing products is just because it stays on for a long time doesn't mean it looks good for a long time on the lips. So not gonna be a favorite, but I do think it's a cool product, especially if you want an opaque lip that is glossy and that will be transfer proof at least for a few hours. You can get a few solid hours of wear out of this before it starts to look kind of crusty. So I'm gonna put this in C tier because I'll give it like a little boost for innovation. Like, I do think it's an innovative format, but yeah, it's just not for me, but I could see it being really great for some people. Whew, that is everything. Those are most of the products that I have tried so far this year. I left out things that I've already shared my opinion on multiple times, like the NYX color corrector stick. Like, you already know about that, even though I tried it this year. Like, we've talked about that a lot. So these were the things that I felt like I needed to give you updates on, that I've tested in like first impressions type videos. These are my follow-up thoughts, and I really enjoyed the tier list. I think the tier list format is here to stay, because I find speed reviews just kind of tedious to both film and watch, because it's just like a lot of information, a lot of products all at once. But with the tier list, you really get a nice visual of where everything lands and how everything compares. So I really love that format. I think I'm going to keep doing it. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you had fun. If you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I do also have a Patreon and a channel membership if you're interested in supporting my channel further and getting some extra content. I do a vlog and a makeup video for my patrons and members every month, so I'd love to have you over there as well. Otherwise, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon in my next video. Bye!